This video go through the first part of the unit homework here, just solving by taking the square root. So here there's nothing to move over. We just need to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. So x plus 3 squared. Take the square root of that. Take the square root of 81. So we have x plus 3 on the left side. And then remember, we've got plus or minus 9. And then you're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So here we have x equals negative 3 plus 9, or negative 3 minus 9. That puts us at 6 or negative 12. So those are the two solutions. Here we need to move the 12 before we can take the square root. So subtract 12, subtract 12. So x squared equals negative 8. Now we can take the square root of x squared, and that is x. Then we take the square root of negative 8. We have 4 times 2, 2 times 2. So what we're left with, x equals, we can pull out a 2. We're left with a 2 on the inside. However, because we started with a negative on the inside, we pull out a 2i, and don't forget the plus or minus. Number 3, we need to add the 9 to both sides. So we have 4x squared now is equal to 28. Divide both sides by 4. So x squared equals 7. And it's at this point that we can go ahead and take the square root of both sides. There's nothing to simplify with 7, so we just have plus or minus square root of 7. Number 4, we need to move this 7 first. So we need to do 161 divided by 7. So we end up with x plus 1 quantity squared equals 23. And it's now we can go ahead and take the square root of both sides. So we take the square root of x plus 1 squared is just x plus 1. And then the square root of 23 equals plus or minus square root of 23. That doesn't simplify, but we need to move the 1 over. So we're left with x equals negative 1 plus or minus square root of 23. And we can't combine those because the 23 is under a square root symbol. Here, add 49 to both sides, and we're left with x squared equals 49. So at this point, we can take a square root. That should be one that's very, very familiar to us. Just don't forget the one simple step that when you take the square root of x is x, that when you do the square root of 49, you have to do plus or minus 7. Don't just do the 7. Here, divide both sides by 4. 64 divided by 4 is 16. So we have x squared equals 16. Again, this one should be very familiar to us. Just make sure when you do the square root of 16, you do plus and minus 4. Here, we need to take the square root of x minus 2. There's nothing to move before we take the square root. So take the square root of both sides with x minus 2 equals, again, 100. That's one we know is plus or minus 10. Here we're going to add 2 to both sides. So again, we have 2 plus 10 or 2 minus 10. 2 plus 10 is 12. 2 minus 10 is negative 8. So there's my two solutions. So sometimes you end up with something with radicals left over. Sometimes you have stuff with imaginary numbers and radicals. Sometimes it's just two integer values like you're seeing right here. So sometimes you just have integer values. Here we go ahead and take the square root of both sides. So x plus 3 quantity squared. There's nothing you can do. The first step here is to take the square root on both sides. So you have x plus 3 equals plus or minus 5. I'm going to do minus 3. So another way to look at this, you have x equals negative 3 plus 5 or negative 3 minus 5. So that would put us at 2 or negative 6. And I would again encourage you, use Desmos to graph those two pieces, right? Do y equals x plus 3 squared and y equals 25, and then find the two intersection points. You'll see that they are 2 and negative 6. So one last example here. We'll move 5 over, so we're left with 2x squared equals negative 172. And 172 divided by 2. So x squared equals negative 86. So at this point, let's go ahead and take the square root of both sides. Excuse me. So x squared, square root of negative 86. So 86, I know we can divide 2 into that. So that's 2 and 43, but unfortunately that's as far as that'll go. So actually the only thing that we can pull out here is that negative. So we pull an I out front, and we're still left with 86 underneath the radical.